Hey everybody. I feel like it has been forever since we've taken a trip around the world, so that is exactly what we're going to do today. And we're going to start here with my waterfall tank. So the leak I had is completely sealed up now. We've got no more leaking whatsoever. But I was running into issues with it splashing all over the place, and I realized what the problem was. If you'll remember, when I came through here and sort of redid everything and covered it with that cloth that I covered in that rubber, what I wound up doing was making the end up here where the water flows over, it's higher now, and what we're getting is much more water flowing over right here. And as a result, it was falling all the way down, hitting my Anubias and splashing off the Anubias leaves, and it was creating basically a drizzle of rain on the floor down here all day, and my carpet was downright wet from the splashing. And so what I wound up doing as a temporary measure is just hanging a piece of cloth right there, and you can see how the water basically just runs down the cloth now. I do get a little bit of dripping, but it's much smaller and it's starting from much lower, so it's not falling as far. We're not getting nearly as much splashing, so I'm not worried too much about that, but that was causing me a problem. Otherwise, all of the plants are doing pretty well. This cutting right here from the pothos plant is looking a little bit washed out and peaked. That's probably because it's getting blasted by the light. The pothos plant you can see up top there actually still looks pretty good, and that is not getting blasted by the light. My dead nettle, last video we saw that, it was looking all wilted because I hadn't watered it in forever, but that came right back as soon as I put some water in it, so that looks fine. All the other plants are doing well enough within the waterfall itself. Even my little oddball plant that I was never really sure what it was called, that was in this little cap right here, that's still alive. I'm not going to say it's thriving, and I do have to keep it covered up, and so it normally has this lying over top of it, which is not necessarily attractive to look at, but it blocks enough of the light that keeps me from cooking it basically, and it still allows enough light for it to grow. And so we're getting plenty of growth on the other stuff down here too. In fact, we're probably getting a little too much light on this stuff as well. I can't stress enough how powerful this LED grow light I have shining on this unit is, or shining on this area right here. So my other LED, my good Cree LED, went on the fritz. It was flickering and kind of burned out, so I wound up having to replace it, and I replaced it with this glass. It is still a 3000K, but that's real glass, and so this is quite heavy, and you can see how silver and shiny and out of place that looks. The other one I had spray painted brown. You could hardly really notice it unless you were looking right at it, so I'm going to have to do something about that. The fish tank itself has gotten a little bit cloudy, and I don't know why. I'm just kind of letting it ride out. There's nothing to worry about. There's no ammonia, nitrate, or anything like that building up in it. It's just getting cloudy for some reason. So we'll wait and see. Time will tell. It's been like this for about a week now, and it's getting clearer, believe it or not. It actually is starting to clear up a little bit, so I'm not too concerned about it, but it does make me scratch my head a little bit. I'm wondering what's making it turn cloudy like that, because I haven't done anything that I can think of. Although, you know, I did not too long ago, I did a pretty big water change, and I sucked a lot of the mulm out of the tank. You can see up front here, there's some starting to grow back. Well, I say grow back, I should say starting to pile up again, all that mulm and stuff down there on the bottom. I vacuumed a lot of that out of there. This corner had it about 2 inches deep, and now you can actually see the gravel. And of course, along the back, it was a lot of it in there. So I'm wondering if I didn't disrupt the nitrogen cycle a little bit just by removing a lot of the mulm that's in there. I've been kind of curious myself to find out whether the mulm, it's interesting to watch that little red wag platy there just sort of settle into the mulm and just lay on the bottom like that. Never seen him really do that before. So anyway, I'm starting to think that the mulm is actually playing an important role in the tank, and whenever I remove a bunch of it like that, I wind up disrupting the tank somewhat. So that's interesting, but maybe that's why the tank is getting cloudy. My foot tank here still looking as good as ever. And my cherry barb is still in there doing well. You can see that redfish swimming around in there. So I still have not really gotten in here and looked around for shrimp. I do see something that looks like it might be a shrimp. Sure enough, it is. I don't know if you can see it or not. Let's see if we can zoom in on this camera. I've never tried this before. Hey, look at that. You see that right there? That's all I can zoom. That's full zoom. That is a ghost shrimp. So I do still have ghost shrimp living in this tank after all these years. So they're clearly still breeding. I mean, there's no way that ghost shrimp is still from the original batch. I've had ghost shrimp live a few years before, but this would be ridiculous if that was still the original ghost shrimp in there. But there you go. We do still officially have ghost shrimp in my foot tank. You saw it here first, everybody. All right, let's move on and get these lights turned out for the time being. And then that way it won't glare us out so much when we start making our way around the rest of the room. Keep in mind, this is completely spur of the moment. I just walked in here. We might find dead fish. Who knows what we'll find. This is going to be a trip we're taking together at this point. So if some of the tanks are a little shoddy, you know, what you see is what you get with me sometimes. So this is my 29 miscellaneous. And this tank's just ticking over like a clock, like it always does. This tank has just been so rock solid, reliable for me over the years. It just never has issues. I know I shouldn't really say that, I'm going to jinx myself, but it just doesn't. Now that I'm looking at it, the one thing I can tell you I've noticed different, you see how the Anubias there, I'm sorry, the Java Fern has come up and off of that rock. If you'll remember, not too long ago, I got in there and I really pulled a lot of the Java out of there. It was getting kind of overgrown. And when I did so, it was crawling all over all of these rocks down here. And just by pulling those loose, I wound up disrupting the roots on that one. All those years it took to grow that and attach it to the rock. And that quickly, I've just broken it loose. And you can see it's completely unattached from that rock now. Maybe the last little tendrils of the brown roots are still hanging on somewhere, but for the most part it's now unattached. Last time we looked in here, I had a black skirt tetra that had some little white lump thing on its lip, and I do not see it at the moment. I saw two of the black skirt tetras in the bottom, and I don't see that little white thing on the lip of either one of them. Wait a minute, is that him back there? Well, no, I guess it's whatever it was, it's gone now, because it was on the long fin black skirt tetra, and those are both over here, and I don't see any white thing on either of their lips. So whatever was in there was gone, so nothing to worry about on that. And then otherwise, everything else is just ticking over like a clock. So we will move on to the 55-gallon Gourami tank. Not much going on different in here either. I haven't been doing a whole lot new in the fish room, just kind of been keeping up on maintenance a little bit. If you have not been following along, I have named this angelfish here. I named it Kara after one of my members' daughters. Just had a birthday recently, so that was her birthday present. Getting the fish named after her, so that is now Kara. My gouramis are doing good. You can see they're in there just nibbling and munching away. They're working on the algae. They trim up that hair algae. Their colors are starting to really pop. The males are starting to look beautiful. I definitely need to get in here and wipe the glass down again, but this still, even through all that algae and everything, you can get an idea of how beautiful and colorful and elaborate these fins are starting to get on these males. And I also have a $12 LED shop light on here from Walmart, so the quality of light that we're trying to see these gouramis in is fairly poor. But this one here is another male that's just in really, really good shape and is starting to look beautiful. Let's see if it gives us a little profile shot there. There we go. So you can see how elaborate some of those fins are starting to look. So with the exception of the glass being green, the Gourami tank is doing really well. No issues there. So moving on to my 55-gallon tank. I still want to get in here and really sort of rearrange this tank. It's sort of become these two islands of raggedy looking Anubias with some rocks on the bottom, and then I actually finally took the rock off of my big piece of woodwork right here, and it's just been free floating ever since. So I don't know, one of these days we'll get in here and we will do something about it. Here's a look at my angelfish in this tank, which is another one that I think is absolutely beautiful. At first glance it looks like a fairly mundane, common angelfish, but when it starts swimming around, it's got a lot of subtle colors in there, a lot of blues in there, believe it or not, and its fins are, its scales are sort of like cup-shaped, like a pearl scale. And when it gets in the light the right way, it just really lights up and has these really sort of shiny scales on it. Really, really beautiful angelfish. But otherwise, the tank itself is just kind of, again, it's these two big masses of raggedy looking Anubias. It's got a bunch of Java moss growing all through it. You can see all that Java moss in there. That's actually a piece of Java fern that's still hanging on and somehow staying alive in there. And you can see that Java moss is even growing down in the corner and everything in here. A little bit of that green cyanobacteria, but it really is not overwhelming this tank at all. Not a whole lot to worry about. So we'll get in there, we'll do something to this tank one of these days. And speaking of the tank that we'll get in there and do something to one of these days, my 40 breeder here. Still haven't done much to this, haven't really thought much about it. It's really just becoming a habitat for the Blackbeard algae at this point. The vegetation is so dense and thick, there's just no room for water flow or circulation or anything in this tank anymore. I mean, it's just packed with vegetation. So I could probably get in there and sort out a whole bunch of little Anubias. That's some kind of micro Anubias or Anubias nana or something like that. That is actually Anubias and some kind of Java that never got really big. It always stays sort of stunted and tiny. I've also got some crypt in there that has sort of stunted over the years and grown really short and tiny. You can see some of the larger Anubias leaves poking through every now and again. But it is just overrun with that Blackbeard algae. I mean, you can see how thick it is right there. So I have 4 algae-eating fish in this tank, and that's what it still looks like. I have 2 Siamese algae eaters and 2 rubber lip plecos. So, moving on to my 125-gallon New World tank. Let's try to get a look at my spotted tilapia Flo real quick before she vanishes. See if we can get the glare of my hand out of the way. She's a real beauty there. This is the one fish that is sort of an oddball in the New World tank. All the fish in this tank are either from North or South America, but she is actually from West Africa. I got her from a viewer. She came from Florida ultimately, so long story short, she ended up in this tank with everybody else. But for the most part, everybody else in this tank is a New World type fish. That is my bluegill sunfish. Caught that with a net. I've got some silver dollars and some spotted silver dollars in here. You can see a few of them down here. I've got some shiners. I've got a white suckerfish. I got a big pleco in the bottom. And nothing really going on in this tank either, so we're just going to have a little bit of a look at it and move on. We're going to try not to make this a marathon video. Remember, I do a 2-hour live stream every Friday and Sunday night publicly, and then on Wednesday nights I do a 2-hour live stream for my members only. So if you're interested in getting a little behind the scenes, a little more intimate live stream chit chat with just a few handful of people, sign up for membership, at least for the time being anyway. I guess once we get a whole bunch of people signed up, it won't be like that anymore, but for the time being, the Wednesday night live streams are nice, intimate little chats. So if you want to get in on that, go ahead and sign up for a basic subscription, and you will have access to that. So, snail tank, nothing to talk about here, just snails doing their snail thing, just growing and being fed, and lots of stuff on the bottom. I did just get in here. I really wish I'd gotten on video now that I'm thinking about it, but it'll grow back. So hopefully next time I do it, I'll get it on video. But all of the Java moss that grows in there, and even some of it that was growing up in there, I pulled all that out, and in fact this time I just threw it away. I've got so much Java moss that nobody seems to want that I'm not saving any more of it. I literally have a gallon jug of Java moss in the other room, and so from now on I'm just throwing the Java moss away until I find somebody that really wants a lot of Java moss, and then you can have it. Native tank, this is all Gambusia that I caught, or mosquito fish. Gambusia is their proper name. I got a couple of crayfish, or at least a crayfish. I did see it last night, so I know it's still in there. And I wound up throwing a bunch of red wag platies in here, which are not really native to this area, but are native to North America, sort of, close enough. So I do have some red wag platies in this tank too, but that was more out of necessity than anything. Actually, looks like we have a dead mosquito fish right there, one of those Gambusia I was talking about. So I told you we might run into some dead fish in this video, you never know. So afterwards I'm going to have to come back and get that out of there, or maybe not, just leave it in there. Maybe the crayfish will get to it and have a little bit of a crayfish snack. So the pothos plant cutting that I put in this tank is doing really well. The water sprite I have, I mean, this thing is just a beast. It's a monster of a plant. And then of course there's all sorts of little plantlets. I always call them babies, but I finally found out they're actually called plantlets. So I got a ton of that. I got loads and loads of the water sprite. Again, if anybody's interested, check out my email in the description down below. I always sell all my excess plants, and I've got lots and lots of Java moss. If you're interested in that, I can even hook you up with some serious duckweed if you want a lot of duckweed, because I got a lot of that too. So moving on to my 125 gallon tank. We will have to come around here, and unfortunately I've still got a bunch of stuff on the floor from my live stream last night. I've not gotten in here and cleaned up all the different props that I was using, little batteries and different pieces of this, that, and the other thing. So hang on here a second here, get this tripod out of my back, and there we go. That's the whole tank. So I need to get in here and do a water change just for basic maintenance purposes, nothing really specific going on. But as much as I've cleaned out this Java moss right here, or Java fern rather, I'm sorry, I got Java moss stuck in my head. This Java fern is just getting so thick and out of control. I really need to do something about that. It's blocking the light, it's blocking the view, it's blocking the water flow, it's preventing the fish from swimming around the tank. So I'm going to really need to get in there and remove some of that Java fern. So I will have some big pieces of Java fern available if anybody's interested in large pieces of Java fern. But I'm afraid the same thing's going to happen that we saw in my 29 miscellaneous. If I get in there and start tugging on this, it's all going to come loose. That is one big piece of wood right here. It goes down, it's like wishbone shaped. This is the top centerpiece, and then one fork of it goes to the front of the tank and the other fork goes into the back, and there's a rock in between, and this Anubias is growing all over the wood and that rock. And to get in there and tear that all apart and separate some of it out while leaving some of it in there is going to be really difficult. I'm afraid I'm going to wind up just tearing the roots, and it's going to rip it off of the rocks. And you know, again, this is years of just allowing that to develop and grow and fill in, and after all these years I'm going to get in there and just tear it apart as I rip it up. So we'll have to do that as gently as I can. Maybe I'll just get in there with scissors and we'll cut some of it out. And then the other thing I need to do is thin out my red tiger lotus here. This stuff is just, I mean, all the way to the bottom of the tank. It's just so thick in there. There's one of my nearite snails. You can see how the Java roots have grown all over that piece of wood, and I've got little bits of it growing all over there. I've got Anubias and Java attached to the wood there, and a little bit of Java Windelov is growing attached to it. So again, this stuff has just been sitting in here for years, letting that stuff grow and attach to it. But that is just getting problematic. It's probably even got, Well, it doesn't look like it yet. Well, yep, there is one all the way in the back. We definitely have a lily pad already on the surface, so I definitely want to get in there and start cutting the pads down because they will start blocking the light mightily. So there is a look at the 125. Having a look at my deep sandbed tank. So some interesting stuff going on in this tank, and one of those interesting things is the hair algae that has taken over. I've treated for cyanobacteria, and it looks like I've gotten on top of that. It does not seem like it's come back since I wiped it out. I used the Ultralife blue-green stain slime remover this time, and as soon as all of the green algae was gone, or I should say the green cyanobacteria, I'm calling it blue-green algae because that's what it's referred to as, but it's actually cyanobacteria. As soon as that was gone, I got this explosion of this hair algae, and I don't mind it as long as it's not out of control. And when I see it growing on my Anubias like that, that's out of control to me. That just doesn't look pleasant. That's just way too much fuzzy, furry green. You know, I need to do something about that. So the something I did about that was I got 4 nearite snails. You can see one's right there, another one's down on the bottom. You can see my German blue rams, or my blue rams, in the back of the tank. They're still a paired off couple. No signs of spawning yet, but they do still pal around all the time. They're always together, and they both look great. Again, these are my PetSmart, you know, the $5 jobs or $8 jobs or whatever they sell them for. But they're looking good. They're doing well. But otherwise, I'm just waiting to see how those snails, there's 4 of them in here somewhere. We saw 2, but I know there's 2 more. I'm waiting to see how they actually turn out. And if you'll notice that little bit of a plant way back in the corner there trying to struggle and hang on, even though the camera can't figure out what it's trying to focus on. This little thing back here, that is my Ludwigia. I planted a piece of that in here just to see if it would do okay and grow, and I probably should have not planted it right in the shadow of that piece of wood, and it already looks like it's starting to get that fuzzy hair algae growing all over it, so we're gonna have to maybe get in there and do something about it. Look at this. I mean, I'm having to hold that with one hand because I was going to pull the Anubias off of the plant. So that's just, I hate this stuff. Again, it's pretty in certain circumstances and the right amounts of it, and you know, but it's just, it's too much in this tank. We definitely have to get in there and do something about that. And of course, I got to figure out what to do about all the algae in my hand there. Looking at my quarantine tank, definitely looks like I need to do a top off in this tank. I also probably need to get in there and scoop some of the duckweed out of it. And it looks like my water sprite that's growing in there is ready. Some of those can be pulled out and thrown in my grow out tank. I don't even see any of the fish that are in here. There's about 4 or 5 red wag platies that live in this tank, and they're just in there doing their thing. I see them every night when I feed them. Otherwise, it's just a quarantine tank. I basically just keep some fish in here to keep it a living, functioning tank, so if I ever need to use it as a quarantine tank, it'll be ready to go for me. But there's just some red wag platies in there. They're probably swimming around near the surface in the back, and that's why we can't see them. So, moving on to my puffer tank, my brackish tank as I call it, even though it's not really brackish water anymore. I changed the lights recently in this tank, and so while both of them are on, it's a lot more light. As you can see, it is now. But even with just one of them on, it's still a lot more light than I used to have on here. What used to be on here was a standard 18-inch, you know, it was one of those 2-foot aquarium hoods. Or I'm sorry, it was a 3-foot aquarium hood, but inside of your average 3-foot aquarium hood is a 2-foot fluorescent tube, and they're like 23 watts or something like that. It's the equivalent to like a little under cabinet lighting kind of fluorescent tube, and that was what lit this tank mostly. So even when I turned the forward light off that I just turned on to light it up the way it is now, even with that out, The tank is still a lot brighter than it used to be because I got these new, these are shop lights, and they're very, very bright LEDs. And so with just the one in the back here, I don't even, can't even see my hand, just the one in the back there lights it up plenty, but to really light it up for the video, I put this one on it too. But so now what we're starting to see is an explosion of the red cyanobacteria. You can see it growing all over the sand in the back. It's on the glass. We got all kind of weird growth on that rock. I don't even know what that is. It's not cyanobacteria, or it's probably a little bit of everything. And then you can see this cyanobacteria is really starting to grow over all that kind of stuff. So I knew we'd start seeing some kind of issues once we changed the lighting over, especially since we changed it over so dramatically. But that looks like what we're going to have to start dealing with is this red cyanobacteria again. Maybe I'll treat this tank with the ChemiClean, because that's specifically designed for the red cyanobacteria. And maybe I'll reduce the salt a little bit more, because I always tend to associate that red cyanobacteria with salt water or salty water. Last but not least, I don't know whether you've all seen my little pufferfish ornament before, but it's got the sparkles on the inside. And so this is a little Christmas ornament. I've had it for years. My wife got it for me a long time ago when I first got Butterbean. That's my little pufferfish ornament that kind of lives here on top of this tank. But we were going through some old stuff the other day, and my wife found a box of old ornaments that we never opened up, and this was in there too. This is like a glass, I guess it's a prawn. I don't think it's supposed to be a crayfish because it's got those little claws up front. So I think that's a glass prawn, and one of its legs, its back leg, is broken. It only has 3 on this side, 4 on the other. But it's a pretty cool little ornament. It's all blown glass, handmade. And so that's going to live up here with the little pufferfish. So now I've got a prawn and a puffer living together once again, just like Butterbean used to have a little ghost shrimp living in the tank with him for several years. They were buddies. So there you go, everybody. I am going to say thank you for watching. We've made it all the way back more or less to where we started back here at my 29. And so I hope you enjoyed our little trip around the world. Don't forget to subscribe, like, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell and all that good stuff. That helps me out, and it will help you out, because you will get notified whenever I do a spur of the moment live stream. And don't forget, I do a members live stream on Wednesdays, and I do a public live stream every Friday night at 8 Eastern time and every Sunday night at 8 Eastern time. So make sure you check those out. They're a lot of fun. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.